If you think a third world economy like Venezuela cannot break the Canadian economy, you are wrong. But if you think the Canadian economy is definitely doomed due to the situation in Venezuela, you are also wrong. There are three important aspects you need to know about to understand how the situation in Venezuela could impact Canada. And I will explain these in a very simple language to you, in this short, no BS video. Here you go. Pay attention. The first aspect to know about is how important is oil to the Canadian economy. Canada is the fourth largest producer of oil in the world and also has the fourth largest proven oil reserves at over 160 billion barrels. The country produces roughly 5 million barrels per day of oil, and as a result, the oil industry contributes towards as much as 5 to 10% of the country's GDP, which is a significant amount, making its well-being crucial to the Canadian economy. Not just this, the oil industry is estimated to support over 450,000 jobs across the country, both directly and indirectly, in sectors such as construction, transportation, finance, and beyond. Money generated by the oil industry contributes billions of dollars to both provincial and federal governments in revenues such as taxes and helps fund healthcare, educational, and social programs. But a major drawback with the Canadian oil industry is its over-reliance on the United States market, as over 90% of Canada's crude oil is sent to the US, which is about 60% of the total crude oil imports for the United States, making Canada the largest foreign supplier of oil to the US. The second aspect to know about is why the situation in Venezuela can shake up Canada's economy. Venezuela has the largest proven oil reserves in the world, at over 300 billion barrels, which is almost twice as much as Canada's. But even with such huge reserves, Venezuela has only been producing about 1 million barrels a day of crude oil recently, which is very low compared to over 3 million barrels a day that the country used to produce back in the late 90s. Factors such as US sanctions, underinvestment in the oil industry, aging infrastructure, and the economic troubles of Venezuela contributed to this slump in its oil production. Now, after the capture of Nicolas Maduro by the US, it appears like President Trump's plan is to increase oil production from Venezuela. This could increase oil supply in the market and in turn reduce prices. Reduced oil prices will mean reduced revenues, stalled projects, and possible job losses for the Canadian oil sector. But this is not the main problem here for the Canadian economy. You see, many oil refineries in the US, like the ones on the Gulf Coast and Midwest, are built to process the type of crude oil produced by Canada, which is typically considered heavy crude oil, that requires more complex and specialized facilities that can break down the heavy crude oil to petroleum products such as gasoline and diesel. Interestingly, Venezuela also produces a similar type of crude oil, which can be processed comfortably in many of these same refineries. In fact, Venezuela used to be one of the top suppliers of heavy crude oil to the United States in the 90s, but sanctions and other factors resulted in this oil supply from Venezuela to the US to tank. Due to the ongoing situation, Venezuelan oil has the potential to be a major competitor to Canadian oil in the US market. If Venezuelan oil significantly replaces Canadian, that could be a blow to the Canadian economy, with potential for billions in lost revenues for the Canadian oil sector, severe job losses, and even a possibility of a recession if things get out of hand. Adding fuel to fire, given the friction between Canada and the US since early 2025, the Venezuelan oil situation gives additional leverage to the US over Canada, potentially impacting trade talks such as the USMCA review. Now, the third and final aspect you need to know about is how Canada can actually benefit from this situation, big time. You see, one of the main reasons why over 90% Canadian oil goes to the US is not essentially because that's where it gets the best price, but because Canadian oil is landlocked, as much of it is produced in the province of Alberta, which does not have access to sea or ocean ports, and Canada lacks sufficient pipeline infrastructure to transport its oil to its own coast. Canadian oil is one of the lower-priced crude oil in the world, generally costing $15 to $25 less per barrel than American oil, and lack of enough pipelines to the coast is one of the main contributing factors for this too. If Canada were to build more pipelines to the coast, then the market for Canadian oil expands to regions like Asia and Europe, resulting in more prospective buyers, which in turn can fetch a better price for its oil. But more importantly, it will de-risk the Canadian oil industry from its over-reliance on a single market. Venezuelan oil situation could just be the driving factor that can lead to Canada doing exactly this. It has triggered a sense of urgency with many Canadian leaders calling for more pipeline infrastructure build-out to find new markets for Canadian oil, which, if materializes, can contribute positively to the Canadian economy. Knowledge is key to navigate the ever-changing economy and building wealth. If you want to get more such no-nonsense economy-related updates and grow your knowledge, you should subscribe.